The 2023-24 football season saw the ascension of Sporting, who on a weekly basis put on beautiful displays of football on their way to winning the league title. The following week, they lost the Taça de Portugal final to Porto, and everyone went on a break for 2 months. When football returned, no one in the country was prepared for the absolute madness of the wildest, craziest season in the history of Portugal. My name is Howie. This is Positively Portugal. Let's get into it. The 2024-25 season started the same way 23-24 ended, with a game between Sporting and Porto, this time for the Supertaça de Portugal. Sporting got out to a 3-0 lead and squandered it. Porto won 4-3. Sporting then annihilated everyone in its path as a response, everyone domestically. They didn't lose another game until November 26th in the Champions League against Arsenal. The problem was Manchester United triggered the release clause of Sporting manager Ruben Amorim. And after the November 11th game at Braga, Amorim left Sporting. When Amorim left, in the Primeira Liga season, Sporting was 11 wins, 0 draws, 0 losses. They were a runaway train, but losing their leader would prove to be devastating. Over on the red side of Lisbon, things got off to a poor start. For the second consecutive season, Benfica lost its league opener, this time at Famalicão. They were able to squeak by wins against Casapia and Estrela before the August 30th game at Moreirense, which will go down as one of the most controversial games of the season. Either through incompetent officiating or a match-fixing scandal that was not uncovered, the game ended in a draw when Moreirense clearly beat Benfica. But as a result of uninspiring play for the first month, the leadership at Benfica had enough and showed manager Roger Schmidt the door. They brought back former manager Bruno Lage, and Benfica went on a tear. They caught Sporting, and they didn't drop any points domestically until a December 15th game at AVS. That brings us to December 29th, the first derby of the season, the first one without Ruben Amorim. And Sporting was absolutely reeling. They were in a complete tailspin. They had recently lost 4 consecutive games, and there really was not anyone who gave them a chance. But they did score an early goal, and they really clamped down defensively. Sporting ended up winning the derby, and that was one of the things that turned the tide back in their favor. One of the things that made the 24-25 season so absolutely insane was that it was the first season ever that all of the big three, Sporting, Benfica, and Porto, went through managerial changes during the season. Sporting actually had 2 of them, and we'll get to that. But as for Porto, they never found their way. They spent most of the season mired in 3rd place, actually playing leapfrog with Braga. And at the end of the season, Porto retained their 3rd position. They're back in the Europa League, as is Braga. But what can you say about Braga? Braga is just Braga. Every year, this team has the potential to win the Primeira Liga. They definitely have the talent to do it. The problem with Braga is there's nothing in their heads. There's nothing in their chest. There's no heart. And let's just say that the only balls Braga has are the ones that are on the field. There was a fifth Portuguese club that was in Europe this season. You know who that was? Vitória Sport Club. And Vitória played 12 Conference League games. 6 of them were qualifiers, where they were 6 wins, 0 draws, 0 losses, and they had an undefeated group stage with 4 wins and 2 draws. The problem was they stunk in the Primeira Liga. They were dropping points left and right. And Rui Borges was the manager at the time. He had just come over from next door neighbor Moreirense. And he led Moreirense to a historical 6th place finish, tying their highest finish ever. So when Rui Borges came to Vitória, we thought it was going to be a good situation. The problem was, as the time passed, the performances got worse. There were 6 occasions in the 84th minute or after that Vitória gave up a goal and blew a lead. And it just looked like the players were on strike. They had completely tuned out Borges. It was over. So when Sporting decided that João Pereira was not the man to replace Ruben Amorim after all, they called up Vitória and offered 4 million euros for Borges. Well, Vitória immediately accepted after they stopped laughing, because Vitória has a tendency to have a very quick trigger finger when it comes to managers. And I get the feeling that Sporting could have had Rui Borges a few days later for free, because I think Borges was about to get sacked by Vitória. He was replaced by Luis Freire, who was a specialist in getting teams promoted in lower divisions. The issue with that was, where do you go from the Primeira Liga? How could it work? But for a while it did. Vitória started winning games again. Players got sold in the transfer window. Good players got sold. But it led to the emergence of Telmo Arcanjo, who had come over in the offseason from Tondela. And then Vitória started getting healthy. Thiago Silva came back. Later in the season, Gustavo Silva came back. Things were starting to look like they were stable again in Guimarães. It didn't last. One of the teams that got promoted was Santa Clara in the Azores, and they started the season on fire. Week after week, they were in a European spot. And they did go through a very bad mid-season slump, even losing a game at Boa Vista, who got relegated. I was actually at that game. But back in Lisbon, 13 days after Sporting won the derby, they met Benfica again in the Taça da Liga final. This time Benfica won, on penalties. It went into the 7th round. But the way the Benfica players celebrated, you would have thought they won the Champions League. It was just the Taça da Liga, not the Taça de Portugal. This is a competition that really nobody understands what it is. And that was another thing that was planted into my head, where I started thinking, maybe this Benfica team just isn't good enough to win a major trophy. This brings us to the ugly part of the season. Yes, Boa Vista got relegated, and it's a damn shame. Boa Vista is one of only 5 clubs that can call themselves champions of Portugal. Benfica, Porto, Sporting, Boa Vista, and Belenenses. We'll probably never see Belenenses back in the Primeira Liga, but Portuguese football is not the same without Boa Vista being in the top division. So as much as they have some problems, some controversies, which include not paying players, not paying staff, not paying other clubs transfer fees and whatnot, we still want to see Boavista back in the Primera Liga. Farense also got relegated. There will be no representative of the Algarve in the Primera Liga in the 25-26 season. The good side of that is they can renew their rivalry with Portimonense, and the Algarve can have derbies once again. AVS unfortunately managed to stay up. They won the promotion relegation playoff with Vizela. So the two teams that are getting promoted are Tondela and Alverca. Another absolutely crazy thing that took place in Portuguese football this season was the downfall of manager Daniel Sousa. Sousa was seen as a brilliant manager, guiding Arouca to a 7th place finish. Braga then hired him and sacked him after 4 games. In those 4 games, he had 2 wins and 2 draws. He never lost a game with Braga, but still lost his job. I had mentioned that Luis Freire became the manager of Vitória, but I forgot. Vitória hired Daniel Sousa in between Rui Borges and Luis Freire. And that only lasted 3 games. The last game, Vitória lost it was the Taça de Portugal in Alentejo against a 4th division club named O Elvas. Now let that sink in. We're not talking about losing against, say, Chaves in the 2nd division. We're not talking about losing against Belenenses in the 3rd division. We're talking about a team that nobody has ever heard of, O Elvas, in the 4th division. And after 3 games, that was it for Daniel Sousa. And I don't know where he's going to land, if he's going to land anywhere. But that's going to be a name that many people in Portugal will think about for many years to come. Sporting and Benfica were eliminated from the Champions League. Porto and Braga were eliminated from the Europa League. Vitória was eliminated from the Conference League. Going into the last game of the season, Sporting and Benfica were tied on points, with Sporting having the tiebreaker. That's because the game before that, there was a 3rd Lisbon derby that ended in a draw. Sporting would take the tiebreaker due to a better head-to-head record within the league. The victory that Benfica had in the Taça da Liga final counted for nothing. Vitória went to Sporting, and Benfica went to Braga. And as lifeless as Braga is in every big spot, every time you think that they're going to lose, they turn it around on you. The game ended in a draw. They had actually beaten Benfica the first time they played this season, and that's where Benfica ultimately lost the league by dropping 4 of 6 points to Braga. Well, Sporting was Sporting. They beat Vitória 2-0, and they repeated as Primeira Liga champions. However, that loss meant that Santa Clara would finish in 5th place and take the Conference League position away from Vitória. Vitória had a chance to wrap that up the week before, but they lost at home to Farense, who ended up being relegated. Obviously, it was hard for them to score because both Telmo Arcanjo and Thiago Silva were suspended for that game due to yellow card accumulation, but Farense was barely professional, and Vitória should have finished them off. 1 week later, there was a 4th Lisbon derby in the final of the Taça de Portugal. And Sporting ended up winning that game as well. They won a domestic double. That game came with a whole bunch of controversy. There was a disallowed goal by Benfica after they were up 1-0. And rightfully so, the goal shouldn't have counted. And yeah, the Sporting goal came in the 10th minute of stoppage time. And yeah, there were VAR replays involved and all that. But the whole loss didn't sit well with Benfica. Benfica is now saying ridiculous things like, well, they're not going to let the Portuguese national team play at the Estádio da Luz anymore, or for a while. The response from the Portuguese Federation is, well, we just might not let you play any home games in the league for a period of 1 to 3 months. I don't think any of that is going to happen. I think cooler heads will prevail. It's just funny to me how the team that is the beneficiary of everything controversial in Portugal finally got dealt a taste of their own medicine, and they didn't like it. So the story ends with Sporting overcoming the biggest obstacle that they ever could have faced, losing Ruben Amorim. And they didn't just win that league. They did something that they didn't do in the 23-24 season, which was win the Taça de Portugal with it. This, in all likelihood, almost certainly is the end of Viktor Gyökeres's time at Sporting. Viktor Gyökeres, by miles, is the MVP of the Portuguese league. You can't just replace 60-something goal contributions. I don't believe Conrad Harder is the answer. And I don't believe that Sporting will be able to win anything next season. Where's Gyökeres going to go? You'd have to believe he's going to go to Manchester United and rejoin Amorim. If he doesn't, then this whole thing with Amorim going to Manchester United doesn't make a damn shred of sense. Why would you leave the most dominant club in Portugal in the last 5 years, the thing that you built, to go to a team in deep decline? Obviously, the answer is he left for money, but money has a way of appearing somewhere. It's just a matter of how long you're able to wait for it. I don't think I will ever understand Ruben Amorim's decision. And who knows? Maybe one day he'll be questioning it. Looking ahead to the future, the smart money is on Benfica for next season. Especially if Evangelos Pavlidis is back. Porto is going through some financial difficulties, so we're told. But they're about to become the first of the big three to sign a player in the offseason in Gabriel Veiga. I wouldn't sleep on Porto. I think this group has had some time to play together. I think they're only going to get better. I believe Samuel Maradian is coming back. I might be wrong about that, but I'm not willing to write Porto off, and I definitely think that they could be a dark horse. As for Braga, look, if they're ever going to break through and win the Primeira Liga, it has to be next season. Because Sporting looks like they're about to lose the other half of their heart and soul. I don't think Benfica is that good. I don't think Porto's not that good, but both of them have that potential. If Braga doesn't do it next season, don't look for them to do it in our lifetime. Because again, at the end of the day, Braga is just Braga. The 2024-25 season will never be forgotten in Portugal. Nothing like this will ever happen again. Almost every moment was shocking. We've had many things that have never taken place, and most of those things never will take place in a season again. Congratulations, Sporting. So if you want more videos about moving to Portugal, the process of getting here, Portuguese football, anything Portugal related, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. These are the best things you can do to help a content creator on YouTube. I want to thank you all for watching, and Forza Vitoria!